talk to you today about is kind of like a figures and statistics video. Now, if that's not really up your street, if you're not really interested in that type of thing, it's probably not the video for you. But it is about Apple, RIM and Google, so it could be of interest to you. On Monday, Apple held their earnings conference call. Now, companies like Apple in retail and that type of thing, or any company that's got selling stuff, get together, whether it's branch by branch, region by region, whatever, and they collate all their figures and discuss how they're going to go forward after that. Now, ordinarily, Steve Jobs doesn't sit in on these conference calls, but because Apple had hit something like their $20 billion sale or whatever like that there, Steve Jobs felt that he would like to sit in on a conference call and then hang around at the end of it for a Q&A. Now, obviously Steve Jobs, he spoke about a lot of things, but I've just picked up on a couple of them. And at the end of the video, if you go across to Tech Planet 30, there is a link there where you can read the entire transcript from Steve Jobs. Now, one of the things he mentioned was that as of the last quarter, which ended in August just past, Apple had sold 14.1 million iPhones. Now, that is going from the same quarter last year, a 91% growth, which is really quite good. And I mean, everybody knows how well Apple are doing in any case because of the recent stock market figures that have come out. The share prices, you know, one share for Apple's was $300 not that long ago. Now, he then went on to talk about obviously the big competitors, which is RIM, who do BlackBerry, and then Google, who do the Android. And he was saying that RIM, over the same period of time, have sold 12.1 million BlackBerries. Now, Steve Jobs doesn't really recognise RIM because of these figures as in a position that they're going to be taking over Apple anytime soon. Obviously, I'm not a businessman, I don't understand all the figures, that type of thing, but I wouldn't have put them in that category. But obviously, you know, he's a lot better, he's a lot smarter than I am, and he knows the business a lot better than I do, and that's how he sees it. Steve Jobs then, he kind of goes into giving Apple or giving RIM a little bit of advice, saying that he thinks personally they need to move out of their comfort zone from just doing, you know, the BlackBerry, that type of thing, and moving into something a little bit more adventurous, and then it'll make them a much stronger company. That's really all that he talks about RIM, but then he goes on to talk about Google, and obviously Google are the biggest competitors. Now, he mentioned that Google have stated that they are activating 200,000 Android devices per day. Now, Steve Jobs mentions in the transcript that he's a little bit skeptical about that particular figure, but he comes back and says, well, you know, we Apple, we are activating between 275 and on our best day 300,000 devices per day. So again, Apple are quite ahead of the game when it comes down to Google and Apple, if you believe the figures that are coming out. And I'm not saying Apple are trying to, but Steve Jobs certainly is a little bit skeptical about this 200,000 devices that Google are reporting are being activated on a daily basis. He also then goes on to state that Google's App Store has 90,000 apps, whereas opposed to Apple's App Store of 300,000. Now, obviously, that's a big factor whenever it comes down to sales and figures within these devices. And this is another area that he points out where he thinks RIM are going to fall far behind. He doesn't think that developers are going to be wanting to develop for 3 separate operating systems in terms of apps for an app store. Now, RIM don't have an app store as of yet, not on the same scale as Android and Apple. And so this is where he thinks RIM is going to fall short of the competition going forward. He also states that in terms of figures for Android devices being shipped, Google aren't able to report these figures, and this is something that Apple are hoping is going to change quite quickly, so that obviously it's going to give them a ballpark and an area in which they have got to aim for. Now, he mentioned something else that I find really quite interesting. TweetDeck, the Twitter client developers, have come forward and they have just recently produced an Android application of TweetDeck, and they have come forward saying that in order for them to do that, they had to take into consideration that there was over 100 versions of the Android operating system for 244 different handsets. that's quite a lot of different things to take into consideration when you're designing one application. Whereas, obviously developers for the iPhone are only going to have to be doing for the iPhone, the iOS 4, and that's it. I should imagine that for a developer, developing an application for Android is going to be really quite daunting. And another thing is, Amazon, Vodafone and Verizon are all stated as in the future quite close, coming up with their own app stores for the Android phone. Now that's obviously just going to, surely is that not going to complicate things even further? I'm no developer or anything like that, but I would have thought that all these different versions of the Android operating system, plus then the 244 different handsets that are available for the Android operating system, as a developer you've got to create an application that's going to go into those. Then on top of that, Amazon are coming out with an app store, Verizon are coming out with an app store, and so are Vodafone. Me personally, I think this is going to overcomplicate the operating system, and I think this is going to be maybe a downfall for Google. I don't know. It's just a prediction that I think. I mean, if you take into consideration a lot of the faults that Microsoft have faced, a lot of people have contributed that to the fact that one operating system is being distributed between hundreds of different hardware components, different like graphics card users, manufacturers, different motherboards, different like Dell and Gateway and all these other. There's a whole multitude of companies where Microsoft, when they design their operating system, they have to take all this into factor and into consideration. And a lot of people have contributed Microsoft's glitches and their blue screen of death all down to this type of thing. So maybe that is something that's going to be happening with the Android operating system. I don't know. Anyway guys, that's it. That's a roundup of what was said roughly, very briefly, on the conference call that Steve Jobs jumped in on. Like I said, if you want to read the full transcript, go across to Tech Planet 30. There's a link across there and you'll be able to read the full transcript from Steve Jobs. Thanks very much for watching guys. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter at iharrison30, or if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email at harry@techplanet30.com. So thanks very much guys, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.